This is Up for Debate presents Scary Movies to Watch in the Dark. Tonight, episode number 162, recorded October 23rd, 2019. Chapter 1, The Exorcist. Hello everybody and welcome to this spooky, scary edition of Up for Debate presents. I am Sean Jennings, joined as always by our own Captain Howdy. It is Matt Mariani. Hello, Matt.
How are we doing today, Sean?
I am just possessed by the thrill of the cinema.
That's right. As the Exorcists say, how you doing?
Devil, how you doing?
I think that's the way they open the exorcism. Is you're supposed to
famous
ask
catchphrase.
How you doing?
Matt.
Yeah.
It's almost Halloween.
We're
a week away.
We are a week away.
We're very close. It's very exciting. I don't watch scary movies normally, but we had this discussion of introducing a series of scary movies, watching them and discussing them here on the show. Matt, what do you think about horror movies?
What do I think about horror movies?
Are you a fan? Do you enjoy them? Have you seen a lot of them?
I am a fan. I do enjoy horror movies. I think I would say that I've seen my share. I definitely by no means have seen a ton of horror movies. It's very seasonal for me. I'm not one of those people that can watch a horror movie pretty much any other time than this special time of year. I maybe in the summer. I think summer is often a pretty good time for horror movies, like late summer nights and things like that. But that's really it. It's like and it has to be at night. I can't really not. Just something about watching a horror movie during the day. I guess it doesn't. It just doesn't resonate the same. I feel like horror movies have to be at night, and this time of year, they're definitely should be the most prevalent. I don't know. I mean, I can't really think of another genre of movies that are like that for me.
Christmas movies. Do you watch Christmas movies any other time than Christmas?
Well, I mean, I guess that is a genre of movies. I was thinking of more of a mainstream genre.
Yeah, but none
it's not like I only watch science fiction movies in the winter.
I guess action movies in the summer, maybe? Do you watch a lot of action movies in January?
I feel like I could watch an action movie any time of year, like any time. But a film like The Exorcist, for example, I think that really it has to come around Halloween or a little bit after Halloween, I think is acceptable. But I think once you hit Thanksgiving, I think that window has kind of closed for me.
Then you got to start watching those Thanksgiving movies.
Movie window. Yeah. Then it's Thanksgiving time. Charlie Brown and the Great Thanksgiving.
I think that's what it is. Yes.
That's the one where he finally kicked the field goal.
Yes, straight into the turkey.
Instead of having it pulled away from him, and
yep.
Then it turned out that everybody was betting on the other team, so he got his knees broken. I think that's how that one ended.
I don't think we saw the same Charlie Brown, but okay.
Well, anyway, this is our horror. Ooh, speaking of horror, one of my pictures just fell off of my desk.
Oh no! Cue the dramatic music.
Oh, creepy.
Yeah.
Got me looking around nervously.
Oh no. Matt, is that pea soup coming out of your mouth?
Uh-oh. I guess I better...
Oh no, you were just eating pea soup.
We better call the exorcist. Or I better call a doctor.
Yes, definitely not normal. Matt, we are starting at the beginning. We've got 6 films we're going to go through. This is the oldest one on our list, coming out in 1973. The Exorcist, directed by William Friedkin, written and based on the book by William Peter Blatty, his 1971 novel, starring the great Ellen Burstyn, Linda Blair, Jason Miller, Max von Sydow, among others. I had never seen this movie. I don't watch a lot of horror movies. Matt, I can probably count on one hand the number of horror movies, scary movies I've watched. Can you guess the last one? Now, I'll give you a hint. It's come out in the last 20 years.
Nightmare Before Christmas.
No, that's not a horror movie, Matt. Stop that.
What? What do you mean that's not a horror movie?
It's absolutely not. It's a movie for children.
Anything? Yeah, there can be horror movies.
Also,
have you ever heard of Hocus Pocus?
That's not a horror movie. That's a Halloween movie. And for the record, Nightmare Before Christmas, bad movie. Anyway, I just had to put that out there. Can
That's
you
highly debatable.
can you guess the last one?
Charlie Brown and the Great Pumpkin.
All right, you're not even trying. You're not even trying. Early early
Rosemary's Baby.
early 2000s.
Weekend at Bernie's.
Based on a foreign movie,
Rush
a
Hour.
remake of a foreign movie. It's a horror movie, Matt. Again, I can't really stress that hard enough.
Mm,
This is going
okay.
nowhere
You
fast.
saw The Ring.
I saw The Ring. That was the
It was
last
The
horror
Ring.
movie I
That was
saw,
the movie.
and I did not care for it. And so I was excited to get a shot at these 6 movies, and I'm going to open my eyes and I'm going to give them fresh look. I've never seen any of them, starting with The Exorcist. Matt, I watched the movie.
You watched the movie.
You did as well. Where do you want to
Yeah.
start on this one, Matt? Because I
First
can
of all-
start rattling off very vulgar quotes if you would like.
Well, that's
Yes, this
that's
will be
half
there
the
will
movie,
be
Sean. Half the
profanity.
movie is vulgar quotes.
I will
That's
say, if there are any
probably the
children
entire
listening,
third act.
it's very, very
the entire
graphic.
third act of the movie. Where should we begin with this one? I guess I chose this movie for a few reasons because this was my pick in our horror movie series, and I thought it would be a good one to kick it off because for me the production of the movie is very much detached from the overall themes of the movie. If that makes sense. I'll try to elaborate on what I mean. When I watched this movie for the first time, I was not scared. I was probably like a young teen when I saw it for the first time, and I was probably the exact opposite of scared. I thought that it was kind of funny. I thought that the production was kind of like comical.
Sure.
I thought that the way that they portrayed demonic possession was a little bit comical. And I think I pretty much laughed at like everything that came out of that little girl's mouth. Like it just seemed like it was a parody. And then she's like crawling on the ceiling and stuff. But if you look at it in context, the movie itself was very scary when it came out, like so terrifying. In fact, and I have a quote here. The film called what was known to journalists as a psychiatric journal called it cinematic neurosis, triggered by this film. There were reports of heart attacks occurring in theaters, and you know how much of that was marketing hype and how much of that actually happened, we don't know. But the point is that when the movie came out in theaters in 1973, this was ultimately something that had not been seen before, and it really, really terrified audiences of that era.
And interestingly enough, even with that, a massive hit, Lines Around the Block, it was the highest grossing R-rated horror movie on the books all the way until Stephen King's It, a couple years ago.
Yeah. Still, so it really considered one of the greatest horror movies of all time.
Oh, absolutely.
Now watching it again, I have to say I was still not so much enamored with the production value. But again, it's 1971. I think watching it now and thinking about the movie in context, I think that it was very much over the top, well done, in terms of their capabilities back then. Now with the themes, I can talk about the themes for a long time, but I'll give you like my brief summary of it. But first, I want to get your thoughts on the film, Sean.
So, a couple things. One, I am a sucker whenever we get the opportunity to do a 60s or 70s movie on this show because I love old school filmmaking when they didn't have digital effects, when it was still shot on film. And I'm just watching it and I'm like, this is a good looking movie. Like, this is shot really well. And I enjoyed it. And I loved the practical effects, like to see the characters' breaths. They literally they built the set in a refrigerator and had it below zero. Like that, I love that kind of stuff. I will say that, to me, this is not a horror film. It's just I'll just come for me. It's not a horror film because I don't think the point of it was. I feel like, and I'll do this throughout the whole series. I'm going to compare it to modern horror movies, but I didn't feel like the point of it was to scare you necessarily. I thought this was more cerebral than a typical horror movie. You want to call it a thriller, you want to call it a drama, you want to call it whatever. To call it horror, I'm not quite sure that fits this film because I feel like that almost lowers it in a way, and it's above that. You got to remember, first horror quote unquote film to ever be nominated for Best Picture, along with and won 2 Academy Awards for writing and for I believe sound design was best sound mixing, and so. I thought the movie was phenomenal. I thought it was fantastic. And I can, throughout the next hour, you lucky folks will hear us talk about it. But from the acting to the directing to the sets to the sounds to all of it, I just thought was really fantastic.
Yeah. One of the other mind blowing things about the movie, like we mentioned the realism and um, the attention to detail of the directors. There's one scene where they're trying the scientists, the doctors are trying to figure out what is wrong with Reagan, with the child, and they go about doing this medical procedure. I don't know if you remember the movie where they have to put like a needle in her neck. That was actually performed like that. There was no makeup like that at all. That was like a real actual procedure. I mean, they had real life physicians on the set making sure nothing went wrong, but just it was very interesting. They That's something that I really don't think you would ever see today. I mean, it made me think of and this was totally accidental, but this one was planned, but the scene in Django Unchained where Leonardo DiCaprio smashes he like bangs his hand on a glass and the glass shatters in his hand, but they keep filming the scene with his hand all like bloody and cut up. It's it's just that kind of realism that you don't really see too often. I feel like for them to do something like that today would just not happen.
Well, and they did it and amazingly enough, there's a great, if you have time, there's a great documentary, The Fear of God, which I had a chance to watch. It's about an hour long. The BBC made it on the 25th anniversary of the film in the 90s, and they interview all the people and they talk about the behind the scenes. But the director of The Exorcist, William Friedkin, is a friggin' lunatic who loves to torture his stars, and among other things in the film, the famous shot of the pea soup coming out of her mouth and hitting Father in the eyes. It wasn't supposed to hit him in the face. It was supposed to hit him in the chest, and it's his surprised reaction they have on film. It's the same in the scene where she is masturbating with the crucifix, and her mother gets pushed back into the wall and screams. She was yanked so hard by the special effects guy. When she was pulled back, she actually literally injured her back and had to go to the hospital. And the reaction you're seeing on screen is her real life. You see her reaching for her back in the take that they use in the movie. She's actually hurt. And there's a couple other situations like that throughout the movie. So, I mean, this movie was certainly as realistic as they could possibly make it.
Oh yeah, yeah. This is it. I always love when directors do stuff like that. Like you hear about Kubrick all the time, pushing his actors to the brink.
Yeah.
You know, he would like famously in The Shining, he pushed the actress, the one who played the wife in The Shining, and the mom, Danny Tanner's mom. Not Danny Tanner. Danny. Have you seen The Shining?
No, I'm not bailing you out here.
Torrance, Danny Torrance. Boom!
Okay.
I bailed myself out.
That's
I
the
bailed
same as
myself
Danny
out.
Tanner. That's exactly
Danny
the same.
Torrance. Danny Torrance's mom. They he famously would like harass her and constantly like berate her in front of all the other cats to make her feel the I guess the anguish, the mental anguish of her character. It's just like stuff like that. It's always interesting when the directors kind of cross that line, and they definitely did for this one, The Exorcist. So Um, so the themes of the movie, what I always found interesting, is you have this. It's very much of the time, right? Of the like, it's the night like 1970s, post uh, sexual liberation, sexual freedom movement of the 1960s. You start seeing a lot more things like divorce and things like single parent households happening as the main character in the movie. It's explained in one of the earlier scenes is a single mother. She is living in LA, living a very, I guess, worldly lifestyle. I think she an actress, or did I make that up?
No, she's an actress who is
She is,
shooting a
right?
movie in Washington, D.C. That's why they're there. Trivia fact, Matt, do you know the name of the movie they're shooting?
Huh.
It is
Uh,
said, it is shown in the movie.
no, I don't remember that at all.
It is Crash Course, is the name of the
Crash
movie.
Course.
Crash
Okay.
Course, which involves that fake protest scene on the steps of the school.
Yeah. All right. That's an interesting bit of trivia. I think that'd be a good one for like a trivia night, like kind of like the everybody the famous Blue Harvest, right? The code
Yes,
name for
yeah, really show off
Star
how big of a
Wars.
loser I am.
Yeah, it's a good one. It in contrast to, I guess, everything that's going on in that era. I mean, you see kind of the role of religious institutions is diminishing, and the priests in the movie, like one of them, like kind of dismisses the whole thing as when they first come to for help, they like it gets very dismissed very readily and easily. It's like, no, that's stuff we used to do in the dark ages. We don't do that anymore. Exorcisms are fake and like all this.
Mm-hmm.
And then it turns out that they find the main priest, whose name is Father Marin, right?
Yes.
And Father Marin is like this hardcore exorcist. From like, he's old school. He's from the 40s and 50s. He used to perform exorcisms all the time. A lot of the other people think he's kind of a crackpot, but he comes out of the woodwork.
Which, by the way, is one of my favorite fun facts from the movie. I didn't realize when the film was shot, the actor Max von Sydow was 47 years old, and they used makeup to age him up to his character's age of 77.
Oh,
Which
okay.
I didn't even realize. He spent like 4 hours a day in the makeup chair to be aged up.
No, really, yeah. That's another. I think after this show is over, I'm just gonna order the DVD, like the special edition DVD, and watch all the special
Well,
features.
there is of course the original cut and the later director's cut. So make sure you see both versions.
Yeah, I admit I don't know as much about this movie as I want to.
Well,
I want to know more about
this
this
is
movie.
why we're good, Matt, because
Yeah.
frankly, we should talk about it. I don't really care about like the big themes and like I'm not like a cerebral guy when it comes to movies. I like all my notes are about how the movie is made. To me, that's why I think we make a good team because we cover all the
Yeah.
aspects.
I definitely like I guess the backstory. I'm more of the thoughts guy
Yeah,
about movies.
the and that's one of the things I did appreciate about this movie greatly is there's no real deep mythology to the movie. The demon doesn't even get a name.
I beg to actually the demon does get a name.
Not said in the movie. He has a name, but
Are
it's
you sure
never
about
said.
that?
It's a fact.
Oh, you're right.
It's
It's in the
never
sequel.
said in the movie.
In the sequel, I
Right.
think they call the name
Pazuzu.
Pazuzu. Right. If you in the book, it's stated in the book.
Right.
I guess it's not in the movie.
It's not said in the movie.
Maybe it's Exorcist 2.
You're probably right.
Where they specifically they classify this specific demon as Pazuzu. But it's are you sure that they don't say it in the movie? The girl doesn't say it.
I promise you, they don't say it in the movie.
All right, I might be getting my movie. Maybe it's the second
You
one.
gotta
But
take my word for it. But
by the way, Exorcist 2 worth watching.
is it?
Not nearly as good as 1.
Sure.
I think you have to have really enjoyed 1, but 2 is kind of worth it. It's okay. It's it's got some moments. Um, but I'm trying to think. Is that the one with? Let's see. No, never mind. It's not. I thought Lawrence Fishburne was in the movie, but
Mm.
I might be thinking of some other movie. Anyway, it's interesting that I think the overarching theme is kind of this like superstition triumphing over science,
Which I
which
love.
is yeah, I agree. I think that's it's a really interesting idea. I'm a big fan of fresh and like not taking the beaten path kind of thing. When with movies and I really did enjoy that it turns out that it's like this old school, like we're gonna do it the way that our ancestors did it kind of thing, and that ends up like saving the day in the end. I think that's it's cool.
And it includes one of my favorite film tropes, which is bad doctors from the 60s and 70s who don't believe the hysterical woman when she says something's wrong. I always love that in movies.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. The horror movies back then, yeah, definitely rife with that kind of stuff. Uh, like I could just my thoughts just went right to Rosemary's Baby,
Yep.
product of the same era.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Well, and that's in the documentary. To backtrack slightly, there are a couple real priests actually in the movie. Father Joseph Dyer in the movie is played by Father William O'Malley, and the president of Georgetown is also played by a priest. And one of them, I believe it was Father Thomas, was quoted in the documentary saying, "We didn't want another Rosemary's Baby. That's why the priests were willing to cooperate with the film and help them out, so that they could make it as." Obviously, it's never going to be 100% accurate to the to the Christian, but they wanted to get it close. They wanted it to be somewhat factually accurate and not just total BS, which really comes through, I think, because this is not insane. Like, the things that happen in this movie are not her bed shakes around a lot. I guess her head spinning around is probably the craziest thing that happens, but everything, she moves some furniture around. Like, it's not extreme in any way necessarily.
yeah, she crab walks on the ceiling at one point, I think, doesn't she?
On the floor,
Or maybe it's on the floor.
but
Yeah.
that was cut from the theatrical version and wasn't shown until the later special edition.
Okay.
Um,
Got it.
but yeah,
Yeah, it's
there is supernatural stuff for sure. But it's not like, she's blowing up people with her mind or something that's so far out of the realm of reality.
right. Right. It really doesn't depart too far from what I would imagine a real exorcism to be like. Obviously dramatized
Oh,
highly
sure.
for the
But
sake of cinema,
But
but
again, it's what's great about these old movies. No digital effects, right? Today with digital effects, you could do some real crazy stuff. And back then, every effect had to be practically done. And that's what makes it realistic.
yeah. Yeah, it seemed like it would be a very low budget movie other than like all I mean the makeup. I would say makeup is probably the largest cost, right? Would you agree? Like the makeup for Reagan.
All the makeup for Reagan, and we talked about Max's makeup, AJ makeup as well.
Hmm.
And yeah, the effects, I'm sure building that refrigerator that they set a whole stage in. And by the way, and we can touch on this as we go throughout the episode, the sort of cursed nature of the production, but the entire set burned down at one point during the actual making of the film. So I'm sure it wasn't a cheap movie. It says here on Wikipedia the budget was $12 million, but I need to do an inflation calculator and see what that is in today's dollars. And I will tell you.
I feel like this should be a regular reoccurring sequence on the show. We'll call it the inflation calculator.
So today it would be about 70 million, which isn't like a cheap movie, but it's certainly not a blockbuster. It's kind of right in the middle.
Okay.
Movies today are made for 20, 40 million, but those are pretty small. Your Marvel movies are 200 plus million. So you're kind of on the lower end.
Yeah. I remember there's the part of the movie that always is like the most, I guess the one that sticks out the most is toward the end, kind of the climax of the actual exorcism. when every like the bed is shaking and everything's like going crazy and stuff like that. And is it I think I yeah, it's got to be Father Marin, because then there's that second priest that comes in, and he's also there. He's like assisting Father Marin. Father Marin's the one that, spoiler alert, he's the one that ultimately dies in the end,
Well,
right?
both of them die.
Oh, here we go. Father Dyer.
Yes, he's the one who lives, who gives him last rites at the bottom of the stairs.
Yes, that's what I'm talking. Yeah. So he gets knocked out of the window, right, by the spirit, by Pazuzu, who's leaving the girl's body
Yes.
as like a kind of a last ditch attempt. Or no, Father Marin does died of a heart attack. So Marin
Yes.
gets, and then the other,
No,
and
no.
who flies out the window?
Oh no, I'm sorry, I'm mixing them up. Karras goes out the window.
Karras flies out the window.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So they both end up dying, but then
Yes.
it's the young priest, Father Dyer, who's the one that comes and gives them last rites. And
Yes.
yeah, so it's that moment I always think of as like just so crazy. It's just like, and I wouldn't be surprised if they actually did throw him out the window, just based on how ultra realistic they wanted to make this.
Well, I will give you a fun fact, which is Father Dyer is an actual priest in real life. He's not an actor, and they had a very difficult time getting a good reaction out of him during that scene. His friend had just died, and he wasn't acting. So, and this is true, the director actually went up, gave the signal to start the cameras rolling, didn't say anything, so it was rolling. He went up to Father Dyer, got in his face, and slapped him as hard as he could, and said, and this is true, and said, act. And he immediately did the scene. And when you're watching the footage of that take that they used in the film, you see his hand is shaking. And in the documentary, he said, my hand was shaking not because of the scene. It was because was shocked because I had just gotten slapped. And that's how he got the reaction out of him. True story.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you watched this documentary, Sean.
It's if you really like the movie, it is pretty interesting. I will say it's where Wikipedia got a lot of their facts from. So if you read the Wikipedia, it's a little redundant, but it's still nice to hear from the folks making it. And they have a lot of like test clips and never before seen clips in there, so it's interesting.
I think the thing that I like the most about the filming of the movie is the gradual degradation of Reagan's like physical state.
Sure.
Like how over time she goes from being this like innocent girl to being a full-fledged, well, she starts out as like a nice like normal girl. Then you can tell like it's like she's sick, like she has like some kind of like illness or about her. She's confined to a bed eventually, like okay, like she pees on the floor in that one scene, and things are not going right. But then all of a sudden, like I think that first indication of the demonic possession, like the cuts that start appearing just randomly all over her, and then you have the walking, like the shaking fits and stuff like that, and the walking down the stairs in the weird way, like all that. Then eventually just going up to straight up like possessed.
Right.
I'm really glad they didn't just start the movie with her being like she played. I think if this movie were made today, she would by like a mainstream like blockbuster horror director. I think it would just be like she plays with a Ouija board, a spirit like stupid like computer CG spirit comes out and like possesses her, and in the like a few frames of computer generated bullshit, she all of a sudden is a demon. Like just like through like just metamorphosis. I like I like that it shows it gradual. It's like she gets worse and worse and worse.
If you went into this movie not, I couldn't agree with you more. And this was, I think, one of my favorite things was the slow burn. And that if you went in not knowing what this movie was about, it takes you over an hour of the movie before you're really clued into what's happening. Even the really early stuff with the Ouija board where it kind of moves on its own, like even as a viewer, you're like, I don't even know if that did move on its own. I mean, it's that subtle. And you're right. In modern movies, and when I talked earlier about the mythology, this is what I mean is they don't spell it out for you. I kept waiting for, they showed the Iraq scene at the beginning and he has this little trinket he pulls out. of the dirt, and I was waiting for that to come back, and I'm like, oh, when she goes into the attic, like she's gonna find it with a note that like explains everything, because that's what movies do now. A note, this, don't break this, it contains the demon Pazuzu who will possess your daughter, and then she drops it, and then the movie starts. I was waiting for that, and they didn't do it. It was so gradual that it was enjoyable to see the progression.
Yeah.
There's the moment in the movie where Father Karras comes out of her room and says, she says she's the devil, not a demon. Normally they don't do that. And I threw regular water on her, and she hissed like it was holy water. Me as the viewer, I'm like, well, maybe she's not possessed. Like, they actually keep you going to some degree all the way up until the end of the movie. And then even the ending of the movie isn't super defined, because you kill off your two main characters, and then Reagan we barely hear from her at the end of the movie. She just gets in the car and drives off. There's no like super clear, tidied up ending here.
Yeah, the ending, when I first saw the movie many years ago, the ending really kind of pissed me off. Like, I didn't like the ending when I saw it the first time. I thought that it was like there was no clear resolution. Watching it on a second time, I think it's really hard to end a horror movie. Like, that was just my thought when the movie was over. It's like, ending a horror movie is tough, because I don't think, for horror might be the only genre where you don't want to give the audience what they want. Like, you want the audience they might want like a tidy resolution where everything is back to normal and the heroes win and everything is like the day is saved. But I think they always want that hand to come up out of the ground at the last minute.
Sure.
Or they want that like chainsaw noise that from the like off screen. They don't want. I don't think they want a clear resolution. And in this movie, it's kind of hard to pull that off, because like, what are you going to have, like the demon circling and like, how you haven't seen the last of me? Like, yeah. It's got to be. So there's that scene where she's the girl is leaving. And she flies away, but then at the very last frame of the movie, isn't it like, doesn't it show like it's going to happen again or something?
No, I mean, it's really just Father Dyer standing over the stairs, staring down at them, right? Or is there another shot after that?
No, I think that I might be thinking of Exorcist 2 again. This might just be another Exorcist 2 thing. Or you know what? I might have been thinking of Jumanji, Sean.
That's not the same at all.
That's not even close.
Though that would be a fun movie to do for the show.
I love Jumanji.
I do like Jumanji.
The original
That movie
Jumanji
is bananas.
I was thinking of the scene at the end where the Jumanji board is like half buried in the sand, and those kids go
like
over.
On a beach, yeah.
I thought that something similar happened here, but no. I might have been thinking.
But did you know there is a deleted ending that was cut from the original film?
What is this deleted ending?
And it's based on the book, but this I'm very glad they didn't include it, but that's my opinion. So Father Dyer is in that last shot at the top of the stairs, but the film continues after that, where Father Dyer walks away, is walking down the sidewalk, and who reappears? One of the few characters we haven't heard from in a while, Lieutenant Kinderman, the detective investigating the murder. And he bumps into Father Dyer and says, "How's it going?" And he goes, "Hey, do you like movies?" You remember the earlier conversation he had with Father Karras. He says, "Do you like movies?" And he goes, "Yes." And he goes, "Oh, there's a showing and I have tickets." And they go back and forth on the movies for a little bit. And then eventually Father Dyer says, "Yes, I'll join you." And then they kind of are arm in arm like buddies. And I kid you not, which this is insane to me, Lieutenant Kinnerman's last line of the movie is, "I think this is the start of something beautiful." And then they walk off as friends into the sunset. It's obscene.
It becomes like a buddy cop thing.
It does. Well, and there's a great discussion in the documentary, because they had both the director and writer in the room together during the documentary, and they're going back and forth as to should they, because the writer wanted to include it, the director didn't. And at the end of the day, they're like, the director's like, "I didn't want people to leave with a clear opinion one way or the other. I wanted them to leave not knowing what had happened, and I wasn't going to put a cherry on this sundae." And I get that.
Yeah. That ultimately, to me, that sums up the whole ending, is that you don't want to leave a nice bow on it. You don't want it to be the start of something beautiful. It's very much one of those movies that you talk about right away.
Yep.
And I like that about it. Um, any last thoughts about The Exorcist? There's one thing I wanted to go through, but it might take a little while
Matt, we've only done 35 minutes, so
to go through.
we've got plenty of time.
Good. I always lose track of
And I
time on the show.
well,
It's
that's
it's
what
so
I'm
much
here
fun
for.
talking to you and
No,
about these
I've got a whole bunch of notes. I got plenty more to talk
things
about.
that
So
we
what
talk
do you want
about.
to talk about? You want to talk about
So
something? You want me to talk? What do you want to talk about?
no, I wanted I don't want to feel like I'm monopolizing the
No,
conversation here. So I wanted to
we've done
make this
enough of these, buddy.
a
You're good.
two-way street. So all
Matt,
right.
shut up. I
So
want to talk about something. So no, just kidding.
I'll just mute my mic. Yeah, I want to talk about the one of the interesting things about this movie is that I think it created so many tropes in
Oh
the
sure.
horror genre,
Oh
and I wanted
sure.
to kind of go through each one that I found,
Hell yeah.
um, looking back on it, and having watched it again after so many years. A couple of things that I wrote down is the Ouija board. Right, just kind of starting at the beginning of the film, the concept of like a Ouija board. I'm sure that there are probably movies that brought it up. It was always seen as something arcane
Mm-hmm.
and superstitious in our collective, I guess, subconscious. But this is the first movie that I remember, like, and I'm sure, like, again, I'm sure there may have been others before this, but where the Ouija board is like truly cursed, like cursed Ouija board is what I wrote down is like the trope. Like you always see that in horror movies and kids shows and stuff. Like Ouija board is cursed. They play with the Ouija board. They piss off some spirit.
There was literally a
In this
Ouija
case, a
board
demon.
movie.
Yes, right. Case in point. So, um, that's one of the tropes that I noticed. I also noticed I mean, I think everybody kind of parodies that, like, I condemn you to the depths of hell, or the
The power of Christ
power of
compels
Christ
you.
compels you. Yes, that's always the most quoted line
It's
in
a
the
great
movie. I
line.
think. Um, the obviously the idea of like demonic possession and that seems to come up frequently. Elements of Catholicism seeping their way into horror films. I mean, the movie The Nun came out like a year or two ago is just one small example, but you have the Exorcism of Emily Rose and the Orphanage or the Orphan. Like just way too many movies to even sit and name.
Yeah.
Like kind of bringing in these elements, these cultural elements of Catholicism in horror movies. Uh, and the idea of uh, the speaking backwards. She speaks like backwards in one
Yep.
scene, like that. Seeing that is like kind of a demonic thing. Uh, is often echoed in movies, especially like David Lynch movies have those a lot. I don't know how familiar you are with Mr. Lynch's work, but yeah, he brings up that trope a lot. So I don't know. Can you think of any other ones? Any
Well,
other important
again,
tropes?
I think outside the movie, but really this was one of the first times a studio had launched a franchise based on a major picture. Not the first, certainly, but one of the first, and the first within the horror genre to get several sequels, both then and more recently. They also, you also give it credit for some of the later films of the 70s, like The Omen, Amityville Horror, and some of those. Yeah, I agree with you, Matt. I mean, this absolutely legitimized horror. Period. I mean, I think prior to this, they Rosemary's Baby and some of those, I mean, not taken as seriously, and I think this one really proved they could be legitimate films.
No, yeah. Uh, it's it's one of those. It's really one of those like tone setting movies
Mm.
for so many different reasons. Um, yeah, I had to go in and look up some of the quotes because some of these quotes really just. This is why earlier in the podcast I said that this movie when I watched it for the first time as a middle schooler, I always thought the lines were always really really funny,
The lines
and
are
I still
great.
do. I think
The
that,
lines are
I think a
insane.
lot of them, especially a lot of the possession things that come out of
And there's a
Reagan's
lot
mouth.
there. I'm very close to starting to read some of them, which I absolutely should not do. But there's some very good ones.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm just reading them.
Yeah, read them on your own time.
And yeah, you could always look. We encourage our listeners to go ahead and look some of them up. These are some wild stuff. Uh, but yeah, yeah, really, really out there. Especially like imagine like this stuff coming out of a child's mouth in a mainstream movie
It was
in
shocking.
1971.
Absolutely shocking. Absolutely shocking.
Yeah,
I truly don't even know if you could make this movie today. And I'm not one of those like cheesy people who say that. I mean it. Some of those scenes would have been cut for sure in a modern version.
yeah.
I don't think the language necessarily, but definitely some of the graphic. I mean, I'll just come right out and say it. To me, none of these sort of effect-based scenes of the movie really scared me or creeped me out or bothered me, except for the crucifix masturbation scene.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that, and she opens the door, and I'm like, I was speechless. I did not know what was, and then she takes her mother's mouth and shoves her face in it, and then it's like, oh my god, this is insane. I cannot believe this is in this movie.
So that one of that scene in particular, I think there was a like generated a ton of
Oh
controversy
god, yeah.
among moviegoers. I'm trying to see. Yeah, they wanted that scene in particular to push the rating up to an X rating,
Yes. Yes, which still existed at the
beyond
time.
R.
Yeah.
Um, ultimately, they didn't. Um,
Maybe should have been. Who knows?
yeah, I mean, it said, yeah, one particular Times writer said, "I think if a movie ever deserved an X rating simply because it would keep the kids out of the theater, it would be The Exorcist."
Yep.
So, yeah. But again, this was speaking of tropes that this started. Uh, I think this started that idea for mainstream horror movies to like push the envelope. This was like an envelope pushing movie kind of way, and that was the kind of thing that was going on at the time with movies in general. Um, a movie like Taxi Driver just comes to mind right away, but um, this is one of the first horror movies that I think went to like now you see like Paranormal Activity
Oh,
with their marketing campaign when it first came out into theaters was like showing audience reactions and being like, half the 50% of audience members had to leave before the film was over. Like all of that can be said about The Exorcist. And I don't even know if they used this to their advantage. I don't think they did. It was all
no,
true.
the
It was
studio
always,
was legitimately worried about it. They
Mhm.
discussed seriously shelving the movie and never releasing it when they saw the first cut.
yeah.
They truly did not know what to do with it.
So going back to that crucifix scene, they after a week in Washington's theaters, and I'm just shamelessly reading off the Wikipedia at this
Yeah.
point. After a week in Washington's theaters, um, Meacham recalled authorities cited the crucifix scene to invoke a local ordinance that forbids minors from seeing any scenes with sexual content,
Yeah.
even when the actors were fully clothed. Police warned theaters that staff would be arrested if any minors were admitted to The Exorcist. So, um, but
Yeah.
then on the other hand, they claimed that since the film had no sex or nudity, they had to keep it as an R rating rather than an X rating.
Yeah,
So that was the
R
fight.
was very different at that time than it is today. Because R we think of as the most serious movies today, but at that time, R really, I mean, it was a more aggressive rating, but the PG-13 didn't exist at the time. I'm pretty sure it just went GRX maybe at the time. I'd have to, because they changed it a bunch
Yeah,
throughout those
there
years.
was no. Is my recollection there was no PG-13 until was it
Oh, PG
until
13 was much later.
it was
PG 13
much
was
later.
much
I'm trying to
later.
think of
Yeah.
like that was like the 90s,
It
right?
was much later, yeah,
Much later. Yeah.
and so an R-rated movie, minors could theoretically see. It didn't. It just meant it was more aggressive. X was where they really got serious, and
Yeah.
there were X-rated releases. Um,
So,
Now, Matt, there's something I would like to talk about.
yeah.
Before we do, I was just scrolling through the quotes page on IMDb, and I have to read one of my favorite lines from the movie that doesn't have profanity. And this was when her mother was calling Reagan's father because of her birthday, trying to get through to her father, and says this line, which I think is very funny. Operator, you've given me the number 4 times. What did you do? Taken a literacy test to get that job, for Christ's sake? I like that line.
That's an underrated line. Yeah.
No, and I would love, after this current point, I'd love to talk about the acting in this movie, which I think is, for a cast of unknowns, very good. But for me, this movie is made or braked on the sound and the pacing. Because this movie, I cannot think of a movie that does a better job of revving up and slamming on the brakes. Revving up and slamming on the brakes. It's so shifting aggressively with tone that I think is what makes it a good movie. Because, and I could point out a bunch of examples, but a really great one is at the party, at the end of the party, at the house. They're around the piano, they're laughing, they're playing. Reagan comes in and pees on the floor, and the scene suddenly stops. And it's a sudden tonal shift. It happens a lot when they're coming in and out of the bedroom in the movie, where it'll be dead silent, no sound. The character approaches the room, opens the door, and there's insanity happening inside. Or as soon as they step out of the room, all the sound stops. Everything just stops. And that happens throughout the entire movie. And that was probably my favorite part of the movie in terms of how it was technically made, was how they're able to... It's hard to sustain tension for 2 hours. That's frankly why most horror movies today are not 2 hours long. But this film is able to do it because the pacing is so outstanding. Because of the editing and the sound design, which, by the way, a lot of this movie is very quiet. I was thinking in today's modern movies, there would be a lot of like orchestral sounds telling you to be scared, ramping up, dun 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 dun, and it's just silent.
Yeah, a lot of modern movies have that, like those jarring sound effects. I think about It, the recent release of It has a lot of that. Like it's like the movie is telling you you're supposed to
like
be
a
scared.
studio
It's
audience.
Like, now's
in a
the time where
sitcom.
you're going to be scared. Yeah, right. Like a sitcom
Telling you when to laugh.
telling you when to laugh.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like now you got to be scared. The clown is here. You're supposed to be scared now. But I do appreciate that The Exorcist kind of lets you figure it out on your own. Like you're supposed to just be unsettled throughout the whole movie. You mentioned an interesting scene that I just want to chime in for a moment on. The scene where Reagan approaches the party goers. And she says an interesting thing. The only thing she says in the scene, the girl, when she approaches the piano, right before she urinates all over the floor, she turns to one of the party guests who is an astronaut, and she says, "You're going to die up there," meaning, alluding that he's going to die in space.
Oh.
But it has a double meaning because it's kind of indicating that, I guess, even though they're not at the party, it's like, the priests end up dying up there, literally up there in the room with her later on in the film.
Was I supposed to know that was an astronaut?
They do mention it offhand. It's like one of those little side conversations.
Earlier in the party.
Yeah, that's why she said that.
I did not realize why she said that until you pointed that out.
That's something I totally didn't get on the first watch through either. I had to watch it again. Actually, it's one of those like really subtle things, but yeah, that's why she says you're gonna die up there, meaning like in space. But the double meaning being that room is everybody's screwed who goes up in that room.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, that is really the tonal shift for the whole movie. That's like where things start going from bad to much, much worse, in terms of her condition. I liked, and this is going to be one of the movies that we're going to talk about in this series. I guess I'm gonna just tease a little bit rather than spoil, is the movie Hereditary. And the movie Hereditary, one of the central themes, it involves possession,
Hmm.
much like The Exorcist. But one of the central themes of Hereditary is the dichotomy between demonic possession and
Hmm.
mental illness, and
Yes.
and really like it's one of those head scratchers that really makes you wonder what exactly is going on in the course of the film. Exorcist was I think very much like that until pretty much until I guess the end when they make it pretty clear that it's demonic possession going on because the exorcists are the ones who ultimately drive the demon out. But at the same time, I appreciate that there's no cheesy special effects. You don't see like the ghost
Well,
spill out of her mouth and fly away and
and
like a
that's why
cloud
I
of
love it.
smoke.
They never define what is inside of her. They sometimes say maybe it's the devil, maybe it's a demon. It doesn't get a name. It's just something that's happening. Like, don't. That's what drives. When I said I like there's no mythology, it's because these movies that craft these enormous backstories of like, oh, I was in the jungles in Indonesia and I accidentally stepped on a rock that released this ancient demon who used to be a fire god to the people of the Mua tribe. And it's like, I don't need any of that. That's not the fun part of the movie. Get to the exciting stuff. And I like that this movie just skips right over it because it's not about that. It's not about the demon that's inside of her. It's about all the bigger stuff because it's a real movie.
Yeah, and I like my slow burn horror movies. That's the key takeaway I guess from this series. I'm a big fan of that like really slow moving. Like you have to really get into it and invest and watch the movie unfold.
Yeah, no jump
I
scares
don't
in
think
this
that
movie.
no, I don't think you could do it any other way. I think jump scares are cheap. I'm not a big fan of. I think it's more it like elicits like a natural reaction, whereas this is more like a cerebral reaction. I think that the jump scares in horror movies are like simple sugar from this might just be like the biology
Sure.
nerd in me, but let's like you eat simple sugars and your body burns them very quickly. Jump scares in movies happen, you're scared in the moment, and but then they don't stay with you. The cerebral horror of like watching that little girl turn into a like a possessed demon, or watching the this group of people wander through the woods and and things just start happening to them, and you wonder if if the witch is really in those woods,
Mm-hmm.
Blair Witch. So I'm a big fan of that because I think that sticks with you. That's more like, whereas the jump scares are the simple sugars, that is more like the carbohydrates that like your body's got to like takes a long time for them to process and gives you the energy. Uh, and this they stay it stays with you.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote in my notes, never spoon feed you what's happening. And I think that's what's great about it. They don't, it's not like the camera turns and points at the thing you're supposed to pay attention to. You know, they
Yes.
actually make you do the work. And I
And that's
appreciate
what I
that.
appreciate.
Yeah.
It's one of those it's definitely not like yeah it deserves your full attention, and it really does command your full attention in the end. So
I didn't look at my phone once, which is very rare for me during a movie these days because I'm a millennial with a short attention span. So that really the fact I couldn't look away says a lot. Matt, I'm kind of getting bummed out because our list of movies, they're all like really good ones, and I'm wondering if maybe we should do one like really mediocre horror movie, like a Paranormal Activity or one of the like later Saw movies, or I'm if anyone out there has any suggestions, I don't want like cult bad horror movies because those are also fun. I want a movie we're gonna hate.
yeah,
I want
I
the most mediocre, bland, mass produced horror crap you can find.
it's a lot like when you get tired of those 5-star Michelin steaks and you just want to go to McDonald's.
No, because I
That kind
like
of a movie.
McDonald's. So it's more like going to like Applebee's or something like that. At least
All right,
McDonald's
okay,
tastes good. It's not good
fair
for you, but
enough.
it tastes good.
Yeah, fair enough. You want to go to
Eat out of a
Applebee's.
dumpster. Yes, that's
Yeah.
that's what we should do. Matt, we're just about out of time. If you have any other thoughts on The Exorcist,
Um, I think I pretty much said my piece on it. That this has become one of those movies I want to watch every year, as like tradition. I think that's part of the reason I think I'm going to order the DVD. I'm surprised I don't have it already. Shame on
Well,
me. This is a really good movie.
well, I'm believe it or not, Matt. I truly enjoyed this movie, which is I'm shocked. And actually, I think I'm going to get the Blu-ray because I believe it has both cuts on it. Because I watched the original '73 cut, which doesn't include the spider walk scene, the end, some of the other scenes that were later added in a couple different editions. So I may have to get that and do that.
Yeah, there's one. I guess the quote that I want to leave everybody with. It's when Father Karras is um, talking to the other priest, Father Merrin,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, he says something that is, I think, really, really kind of movie, but you really have to pay attention to appreciate it. And it's this: Father Karras is like kind of lamenting the possession of Reagan, and he's like he says, "Why her? Why this girl?" And Father Merrin says, "I think the point is to make us despair, to see ourselves as animal and ugly, to make us reject the possibility that God could love us." I think that's one of the best quotes in the movie, and it really sums up a lot of the I guess the intention, the theme, um, the message, I guess, of the movie is like seeing the most innocent among us fall, which is another trope, like you think of like the Dark Knight, where the Joker corrupts Harvey Dent. It's like the purest among us, which in this case is a little girl.
Matt, would it blow your mind to learn the scene you just described was not included in the original 1973 theatrical cut?
That really bums me out.
Yes, the director. Again, I genuinely, if you are a fan of this film, take an
I,
hour. It's on YouTube. Watch the Fear of God documentary the BBC did. But they talk about that scene specifically in there. In that the director believed it again spelled out the movie too obviously, like the end scene, like some of the other stuff he cut,
yeah, I could see
where
that, I guess.
it's you don't want to spoon feed it to the audience. They've got to figure
But
that out for themselves.
see, I disagree. I thought that was subtle enough where I don't think it was beating the audience over the head, but I still appreciate that they took it out of the film because I think in that case it's better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah.
I would much rather them not force the message down my throat than just kind of let me take it on my own.
Oh, that's what's great about special editions. You get to add it right back in many years later.
Yeah.
Matt, that was our look at The Exorcist, a great film. I think you and I both recommend 1973's great film. Matt, would you like to tell the people at home what the rest of the movies we're going to be covering on this series are? Because I don't want to keep it a secret. I want them to know so they can go watch them and enjoy them with us.
Okay. Well, so Sean and I both picked our top three
I've got the list right here.
favorites. And my three I picked The Exorcist was my number one. After that, my number two pick was I believe was Hereditary.
Yep.
And then number three, I had was it the Blair Witch Project? Yes. Good. Okay. So those are my three.
And I followed that up with three as well. Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Scream. And I think, Matt, if you agree with me, I think we should do these in release date order. Starting with The Exorcist, ending with Hereditary.
I like the movies that we picked are very different.
Well, and they're all different decades.
In the horror
and they're all
movie,
different, yeah.
In the
and
horror
they're all
genre.
classics.
They are. I think that they could be pretty easily divided. Like, I feel like yours are definitely the more like conventional horror movies.
Sure.
And
yours are out there.
Mine are the. I mean, I wouldn't say mine are like
Blair Witch is kind of out
indie,
there.
but yeah. And Hereditary was fairly popular. I'm saying, I guess, in terms of
form breaking,
like,
sort of.
Mine are all slow burns.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no secret there. They're all like gradual buildups, but.
Well, I haven't seen any of these.
They're all very good movies,
I'm
which is
very
why we need
excited.
some crappy ones on that list to balance it out. We need some mediocre ones.
Tweet it at us, at Up for Debate TV. We want to hear about your bad movies. But, Matt, this means next week for Chapter 2, we will be watching 1980s Friday the 13th. Jason Myers coming to a screen near you.
Get your ski masks ready.
Oh boy, it's going to be a stabbing good time.
Get your hockey mask. I don't know why. Why did I say ski mask?
Do you know that the hockey mask is not in the first movie?
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't. It's
I'm excited. Gonna have so many fun facts next week. You're gonna.
It's I think it's just. Oh man, it's been so long since I've seen that. Is it? Do they just do like cuts of? Is it like he's like dark, like in the shadows? Like he's very.
He's not in the movie.
Shadow.
Because, spoiler alert, the killer is his mother in the first movie. Jason isn't in the movie.
What am I thinking of? I might be thinking of Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, yeah, you might be.
Okay, totally different movie.
Rather than us speculate,
it's been a long time.
We're going to go watch the movies. Next week, we'll be back for Chapter 2. Please come back with us. We appreciate it as always. UpForDebate.tv is our website. You can go there and get all the episodes, past, present, and future. Just click the archive button. Check out last week, the Newlywed Game. A lot of fun. You're going to want to watch that one. You can also subscribe to the show wherever you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, Stitcher. We're everywhere, and the video version on YouTube. And, of course, you can get in contact with us at UpForDebate.tv, tweet at us, or email us, upfordebatetv@gmail.com. Matt, this has been a spooky good time. But we have got to roll. So that is that. On behalf of Matt, I'm Sean. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on another scary Up for Debate.